Hello people, Visi here with a random video. I look like a bloody strawberry, apparently. That's what we're doing today. Let me put you guys a little bit higher up. There we go. That's a bit of a better angle. Now, why am I making a video? I actually tried to make one earlier, but felt like that wasn't going anywhere, and I wasn't in the best of mood. So, alas, now we're making one now. But why though? Well, for world building, actually. I'm sitting here looking at just a article on my World Annual page, and I feel like I've been working on these vampires for probably a month, something like that, something ridiculous. And I want to explore it. I want to explore it in speech, which is when I tend to be the most creative, when I tend to make the most. So, that's why we're doing this. Here. That's actually an even better angle. So, what are then these vampires? What is it that is supposed to set them apart? Well, first of all, let's explore what vampire in this world refers to. This world being the world that I use in my D&D games every Sunday. I'll try. And hopefully I'll write something in it eventually as well. But vampires are... Well, if we were to take a scholar who had seen all of history, they would probably say that a vampire is defined as a creature who drinks blood to sustain themselves. A creature that requires blood of mortal to make themselves keep existing. If you asked a commoner in the 13th age, the 13th cycle, which is the one that is currently in progress, they would most likely say, a vampire? You mean those things that stalk the night and drink from people? Disturbing. And they'd not be wrong. In the modern world, in the 13th cycle, there are creatures who are referred to as vampires. By most people would call vampire, would call the Count of the Crimson Forest a vampire. They would call those crawling beneath in the Underdark, in the past between the two continents in the land of the gods, would call them vampires. What they fail to realize is just how terrifying true vampires are. For to those who were the progenitors of these modern vampires, these were called neophytes. They were children. They were not their own. They were puppets. Now, as I mentioned, a scholar might call all of these creatures vampire, for they sustain themselves on blood that modern vampire requires to feed. They need to feed both to keep their powers, but most importantly to stave off a feral nature or something deep within them that is not theirs to command. A remnant of what they come from. Now, what do they then come from? Well, that is tale to tell. They come from a race known as the Vire. Now, the Vires drink blood in massive amounts. 9-foot tall humanoid figures with bat-like wings, wicked fangs, and long pointed ears. These creatures are aberrations. They are not from the material plane, but neither are they from the 9 hells. They're not from the abyss. They are otherworldly. They come from a different plane of existence, their own, which, for right now, as uncreative as it is called Vampira, or Vampira. These beasts, for truly they are beasts, monsters, if you want to explain some of them, hunted their own world into chaos. They were apex predators. These huge creatures kept hunting, and eventually they realized, but far too late, that they had destroyed their own world. They had hunted it into such a point that it was no longer alive to feed. So what did they do? Well, some of them realized that they had powers. Their blood had evolved to such a state that they were able to control it. Now, this is all very much still in the cooking pot as far as creation goes, and the history of them I may not even want to fully flesh out, in favor of the mystery, as many, even of the elder of Bayer, probably don't wish to speak of it, if even any elders are left from so far back. But alas, the first clan which exists among the Bayer, of which there are 4 major clans, were Clan Steel. They represent what they were, hunters, predators, but with a fierce sense of code. They are lawful. They follow a structure. Now, granted, that structure could be torn down if someone were to rise to power. If suddenly the archdevil of the deepest pits of the 9 hells appeared as a buyer and dueled the grandest of our lord, Vampire Lord, and bested them, they would be the new head honcho. They would take the place for the strongest rules, the one who has the best capabilities in combat rules Clan Steel. But as mentioned, some learned how to control their blood. Some learned that there was power in the blood. Some learned that they could do magic. Arcane, no. Not arcane. Granted, there were dragons in their plane, and these dragons did have sorceress abilities. Dragon sorcerers existed in their world, but the arcane was a different question. It was studied to an extent, but it was not greatly studied. Perhaps there was witch hunts. Perhaps scholars were burned for their connection to these beasts of the night, these vampires that they were called. Fools were they. For Clan Crimson, born out of this, the clan of the Red, the clan of blood mages, they created their own spells, and they learned to scry, and they learned how to command. They figured out ways to cast spells and weave magic in order to find other worlds. And they started to create these grandiose spells to also travel there. Eventually, they scryed for, even though, and here comes a major point of interest, is that the next clan we're to mention were formed very much in tandem with Clan Crimson. When one started, which one came first is up for debate. For around this time, the Vire had got one thing. They had realized, holy shit, we're fucked. Let's keep cattle. But far from everyone liked this idea. We're predators, we're hunters. We are not meant to be herders and cattle killers. Disgusting. But there's one clan who does not mind the herds as much as the others. Clan Gold. Clan of manipulators, subterfuge, and control. Clan Gold might have been born after Clan Crimson, or perhaps they came into being earlier when the herds were starting to be amassed. The question is very much up for debate, as clans of Vire are spawned out of much focus, out of exercise, out of focusing to learn about what they are, and as the Vire can last for so very long, for infinite ages, it's very seldom that they spawn offspring. And so clans grow very, very slowly. But alas, I'm getting sidetracked. Clan Gold, then. Well, when Clan Crimson realized of how they could travel, they opened gates and they traveled through something. Now, occasionally they were able to tap into the astral plane, which was the good times, when they were able to travel safely, but this was not always the case, perhaps even not the case at all in the start. Perhaps in the start they traveled through something much darker, something much worse. The void, the nothing. Now the void is the subject for another video all of its own. Suffice to say, it's not a good place. It's a very disturbing location. It's the gap between everything. It is empty, black, nothing. It drives you mad and holds great old ones within. Not a place to take a vacation, to say the least. From this touch came Clan Null. Clan of darkness, of magic within darkness. Now they are very closely linked to Clan Crimson, and in fact, Clan Crimson and Null share much in common also in their society. Most speculate that Clan Null is an offshoot of Clan Crimson scholars who delved into this darkness, because after all, why would Clan Gold be interested in the void? It's empty, it's dark, it's cold, it holds no humans or mortals of any kind to play with. Clan Steel, there's no fight there. And what you might stumble across that could fight is so utterly unspeakable that it does not match what they would want. So who is left? Clan Crimson. The scholars who want to learn. It would certainly match them that they would spawn Clan Null. So, now, having discussed the clans briefly, now if that's briefly, can imagine what an in-depth video on those would be. What comes from them? Well, there are two major things that they can create. Outside of undead, which Clan Steel is happy to provide you large numbers of your run-of-the-mill zombies, and skeletons, and ghouls. They will gladly raise those from the ground to amass armies for slaughter. They create shoutout. Now, a shoutout is to make someone akin to fire. They make them undead. Now, before we speak of the shoutout of the neophytes, let's speak of the Nosferatu. The other thing akin to fire that they can make, which Nosferatu are terrible creatures, truly. They are not dead like neophytes. Instead, they have been fed blood from fires. And the concept of a ghoul, of vampire spawn, come in fact of the fire. The ghoul and vampire spawn are neophytes' imitation of this ritualist vile thing. The fire will drink from a mortal, but not train them. They will not kill them. They will then feed them some of their own blood and empower them. Now, that would be fine if that was all. Eventually, this blood would stop being in the body of the Nosferatu, and they would return to be a normal. But the thing is, they are still alive, which means they can reproduce. And during the Dark Scarlet Empire, many Nosferatu were made. Vires made Nosferatu on a whim. After all, they were going to be kings and queens over this land. Why not? The Nosferatu could be thrown at the walls. They die. Sure, whatever. Raise them as zombie next, and it'll be fine. But they didn't realize that they would reproduce. And the Nosferatu that you see in the modern night are these offspring. Now, terrifying concept on that. Let's mention first that neophytes are not bound, not purely by being made at the very least, to their sires. Nosferatu cannot disobey a Vire. The Vire who has made the Nosferatu, if they give a command to the Nosferatu, they are forced to obey. Now, keep in mind that there was a Vire of Clan Null during the Dark Scarlet Empire that made Nosferatu goblin. Now, remember just how quickly goblins can reproduce. Now picture the idea that these goblins traveled across the sea and they're in other places. They hide away. They are dark, twisted night goblins. Shadowy, wispy creatures that sometimes step between shadows. In truth, more so than just tales of a mother to their child when they're told to not run out into the darkness. These Nosferatu goblins, should their sire return, mind you, these are possibly hundreds of generations down the line, should their sire return and say from atop a dark mountain, "To me, child, to me, all my children shall amass," then these blood goblins, these night goblins, these terrors of dusk will have no choice but to come obey. And this one Vire of Nola will have a army that will make Steel shudder. But alas, we're starting to run high on time, so let's discuss the neophytes now. Now, I just mentioned that the Nosferatu are alive, they can reproduce, they have working genitalia. Neophytes don't. This is why you don't have as many neophytes as you might find Nosferatu, even if some may confuse them for other creatures. Neophytes are dead. They're drained of all their blood. When a first generation neophyte is made, the Vire who make them, who will henceforth be their sire, drains them of all their blood and feeds them of their own. This makes an undead creature. Now that's an important distinction. The Nosferatu are not undead per se. They might still shun light, they might still be affected as if undead, but they are not in truth undead, they're alive. Neophytes are undead. And they're not like their Vire progenitors, aberrations. Now the sun harms both Vire and Neophyte, but Neophyte even more so. And within each Neophyte there is a primal nature, something more, something I mentioned before, the beast, the voice, goes by some names. This inner voice represents that wish to be Vire. For in fact, a neophyte can become a Vire, at the very least the first generation can. Second generation, some say they can, but third generation, no one has tried. Now a generation, of course, a neophyte can make another neophyte. In fact, this is how the consanguinity have come to be. The consanguinity being what the neophytes call themselves among each other. Consons for short. Third generation, no one tried to make Vire, but the first generation often were tempted with the offer, the promise that if you serve me well, I shall make you like me. You shall become what I am, a Vire, true power. Neophytes most likely wish to obey their sire, but they can disobey. Granted, it's not advised, as a neophyte is much weaker than a Vire. The Vire will be able to put them in their place quite quickly and perhaps leave them staked in the sun, where their powers of regeneration is stopped and the sun rises to burn them to a crisp. Or perhaps they'll stake, but give them an item so that they last through the day into the next night on a sliver of their life, and leave them like that for a few days, only to return and ask, are you still disagreeing? Do you still have an issue with my orders? Vires are monsters. That is worth to keep in mind. When the mother of that little child says, if you run into the night, the Nosferatu does creepy, long-nailed, rodent-teethed vampires will get you. Gonna claw at you unless you make sure you keep your lantern lit and see where you're walking. They think they're telling a tale of monsters. They think they're telling a tale of these monsters of the night that are terrible creatures that have no place in the world. And perhaps if they speak of the Nosferatu to a degree, they might be right. But even among Nosferatu, they can be kind. A Nosferatu can offer you shelter for the night. A neophyte can offer you shelter and protection. A Vair will keep you as a pet. The Vair are not kind. They see themselves as above the mortals, and in fact, often they are above the mortals. These are creatures from another realm who hunted their world to the point where they were sentient enough to realize we need to hunt. And now they hunt other worlds in groups of 5 when they see one strong creature that they wish to take on, only to feel alive again. Now, this video is in part made because I wanted to just make something that I could upload over the night and make sure that I actually sleep, because I can't be distracted. But if you guys like this, maybe I'll do more. Quite frankly, this is an enjoyable way to explore my own world. And I've got a few more ideas. Going into the clans, going into Nosferatu, going into the continent Corinne that the Dark Scarlet Empire happened on, what the Dark Scarlet Empire is, what Vair society is like, what are the customs, for I do have some on that. Now, you can, of course, check out the World Animal site and find all the stuff that I've written so far, but it's very much still a work in progress. It's still very much something I keep working on continuously. So there are likely to be things that are going to be changed. In fact, much of the site probably will get like overhauled wholesale to make more sense, to fit together more neatly. But alas, these videos will be a fun exploration. And perhaps this is just one way that the scholar wrote down in their large tome of the monsters of the night, wrote this about vampires. Who knows? This is a world that's filled with scholars, adventurers, a history so deep. Such an old world. So many past adventures and nobody remember anymore. And of course, the Tonekeeper. The shamed undead. The one who waits for the final cycle. But that's a subject for another video. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this 30-minute video. Holy shit, okay, that happened. Until next time, I've been Myth. Stay happy, and see ya.